For the first time in 25 years, Dr. Phil stopped the cameras and walked off set. His hand raised toward the control booth, voice cutting through the studio's silence. "Stop the tape. Right now!" The audience froze. Production staff exchanged panicked glances. And in the second row, a woman clutched a yellowed envelope against her chest, tears streaming down her face. What was inside that letter would change everything, not just for one family, but for everyone in that room. 48 hours earlier, the show had been scheduled as a standard family conflict episode. Sarah Mitchell, 42, and her daughter Emily, 19, were booked to discuss their communication breakdown after Emily's decision to drop out of college. Standard stuff. Routine reconciliation territory for Dr. Phil. But Sarah had brought something the producers didn't know about. Something she'd kept hidden for 19 years. The taping began normally. Dr. Phil walked onto the stage to thunderous applause, took his seat, and opened with his characteristic directness. "Sarah, Emily, you two haven't spoken in 6 months. Emily, you walked away from a full scholarship. Sarah, you told our producers your daughter is throwing her life away. Let's start there." Emily sat rigid in her chair, arms crossed defensively. "She doesn't get to have an opinion about my life anymore." Strong words. Dr. Phil leaned forward. "What makes you say that?" But before Emily could answer, something unprecedented happened in the audience. A woman in the second row stood up. She was trembling, mid-50s, wearing a simple cardigan. In her hands she held an envelope so old the edges had turned brown. Dr. Phil paused mid-sentence. Security moved toward her, but he raised his hand. "Hold on. Ma'am, do you need to say something?" The woman's voice cracked. "Dr. Phil. I need to tell them. I can't sit here and watch this." The cameras were still rolling. The audience had gone completely silent. Sarah's face had drained of all color. "Who are you?" Dr. Phil asked gently, standing now. "My name is Margaret," the woman said, her hands shaking around the envelope. "And I'm Emily's biological grandmother." The studio went completely silent. Sarah shot to her feet. "No. No, you don't get to. Stop." Dr. Phil's voice was firm but not harsh. He looked at Margaret, then at Sarah, then at Emily, whose face had gone from confused to shocked. "Margaret, before you say anything else, I need to understand what's happening here. Did our producers know you were coming?" "No," Margaret whispered. "I bought a ticket. I saw the episode announcement online. I couldn't let this continue." Dr. Phil turned to his producers in the control booth, visible through the glass. "Did we screen her?" A producer shook her head frantically. This was not in the script. This was not planned. Off camera, Dr. Phil made a choice no producer expected. "Stop the tape," Dr. Phil said clearly, looking directly at the camera. "I need everyone to stop for a moment." The red lights on the cameras dimmed. The audience stirred uncomfortably. This had never happened before, not in 25 years of the show. Dr. Phil walked down from the stage directly to Margaret. "Ma'am, I need you to understand something. Whatever is in that envelope, whatever you're about to reveal, this is being recorded. Even with cameras off, there are legal implications. Do you understand?" Margaret nodded, tears now flowing freely. "I've been silent for 19 years, Dr. Phil. I can't be silent anymore." He studied her face for a long moment, then turned to Sarah and Emily. "Do you two know who this woman is?" Emily shook her head, bewildered. Sarah's jaw was clenched so tight she couldn't speak. Dr. Phil made a decision. "Bring chairs," he told his staff. "Margaret, come up here. We're going to do this right. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead." As Margaret climbed onto the stage, her legs barely supporting her, Dr. Phil arranged 3 chairs in a semicircle. The formal interview setup was abandoned. This was no longer a TV show. This was an intervention. "Before we restart cameras," Dr. Phil said, "I need everyone to understand something. This is real. Whatever comes out in the next few minutes is going to be painful. Sarah, Emily, if you want to stop this now, we stop. But if we continue, we do it with honesty. Complete honesty. Emily looked at her mother. Mom, who is she? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. She was your father's mother. Was? Emily's voice broke. What do you mean was? You told me he died before I was born. You told me. I lied, Sarah said, and the words seemed to physically hurt her. I lied about everything. Dr. Phil sat down between them, his usual authority replaced with pure human presence. Margaret, is that what's in the letter? The truth about Emily's father? Margaret nodded, holding the envelope with both hands like a sacred object. This letter was written 19 years ago. By my son. By Emily's father. He wrote it the day Emily was born. And Sarah kept it from her? Dr. Phil asked quietly. Sarah never knew it existed, Margaret said. I kept it. Because my son made me promise, if she ever needed to know the truth, I would give it to her. But what happened next is something no one in the room, or watching at home, saw coming. Dr. Phil looked at the envelope, then at Emily's face, young, confused, on the verge of tears. Emily, do you want to know what's in that letter? Emily's voice failed. She looked at her mother, at Margaret, at Dr. Phil. Is my father alive? The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Margaret's voice cracked. Yes, sweetheart. He's alive. Sarah buried her face in her hands. Emily stood up so fast her chair tipped backward. You told me he was dead. You told me he didn't want me. You told me. He didn't know about you, Margaret said quickly. Sarah left before she could tell him. She cut off all contact. He spent years trying to find you both. Dr. Phil raised his hand, his voice cutting through the rising chaos. Stop. Everyone stop. He looked at Margaret. Is he here? Is Emily's father in this building right now? Margaret nodded. The audience gasped. Cameras that weren't supposed to be rolling were rolling. This was television history being made in real time. Dr. Phil stood up and walked to the edge of the stage, looking directly at his executive producer in the booth. Bring him in. Right now. Phil, we haven't vetted. The producer's voice came through his earpiece. I don't care, Dr. Phil said firmly. If this man is in this building, and that's his daughter sitting on my stage, bring him in now. The next 60 seconds felt like an hour. The side door to the studio opened. A man in his early 40s walked in, escorted by 2 production assistants. He was tall, with dark hair graying at the temples, and his eyes were locked on Emily with an expression of pure desperation. Emily's hand flew to her mouth. Even without being told, she knew. Some genetic recognition deeper than logic or reason. Dad? The word came out so quietly, but in that silent studio, everyone heard it. The man, David, stopped walking. His legs seemed to give out, and he dropped to his knees right there on the studio floor. Emily, he whispered. My God, Emily. Dr. Phil moved aside, letting the moment breathe. 19 years of separation, of lies, of loss, all colliding in this single instant. Emily walked down from the stage slowly, then faster than she was running. She collapsed into her father's arms in the middle of the aisle, and the sound of their sobbing filled the entire studio. Margaret held out the letter with shaking hands toward Dr. Phil. This is what he wrote the day she was born. Before Sarah disappeared with her. Dr. Phil took the letter carefully, reverently. He didn't open it. Instead, he walked to where Emily and David were holding each other, and knelt down beside them. Emily, he said softly, this letter is yours. But before you read it, I need you to hear me. What happens next, the questions, the anger, the hurt, all of that is valid. But right now, in this moment, you're holding your father. And he's holding you. Don't miss this. The cameras captured something that can't be scripted, pure, unfiltered human connection. Emily pulled back from David just enough to see his face. Why didn't you find me? I tried. David's voice was wrecked. God, Emily, I tried everything. Private investigators, Facebook, missing persons databases. Your mother changed your names. Changed states 3 times. I never stopped looking. Sarah, still on stage, was crying so hard she couldn't speak. Dr. Phil climbed back up and sat beside her. Sarah. His voice was gentle but firm. Why? Because I was scared. Sarah choked out. I was 19. Pregnant. He was going to law school. I thought I was protecting her from being abandoned. So I abandoned him first. For 19 years? I convinced myself it was the right thing. And then too much time passed. How do you undo 19 years of lies? Dr. Phil looked at her with something between compassion and accountability. By telling the truth. Right now. He called down to Emily. Come back up here. Bring your father. We're going to do something that should have happened 19 years ago. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. They arranged the chairs in a circle. Emily, David, Sarah, Margaret, and Dr. Phil. The envelope sat in the center like a ticking bomb of truth. Before we read the letter, Dr. Phil said, we're going to establish something. Emily, you're the center of this. Everything that happens next is your choice. Do you want to read the letter alone? With your father? Do you want me to read it? Emily wiped her eyes, looking at the yellowed envelope. I want my dad to read it to me. David's hands trembled as he took the letter. He opened it carefully, and even from a distance, you could see the handwriting, young, hopeful, completely unaware of the 19 years of separation ahead. David cleared his throat, struggling to control his voice. To my daughter. Today you were born, and I became someone new. Someone better. Your mother is sleeping now, exhausted and beautiful, and you're in my arms as I write this. I don't know what kind of father I'll be. I'm terrified I'll mess it up. But I promise you this, I will always show up. I will always fight for you. Whatever happens in this world, you will never wonder if your father loves you. You're 1 hour old, and you've already changed everything. I look at you, and I see every possibility. Every hope. Every tomorrow worth fighting for. I'm writing this letter because your grandmother said I should, that someday, if things get hard, you might need to know that from the very first moment you were wanted. You were loved. You were everything. And you always will be. Your father. David. The letter ended, but the words kept echoing. Emily was sobbing. David was sobbing. Even Dr. Phil's eyes were wet. Do you see what you missed? Dr. Phil said quietly to Sarah. Not just what Emily missed. What David missed. What all of you missed. Sarah nodded, unable to speak. Dr. Phil turned to the audience, many of whom were crying openly. This is what secrets cost. This is what lies steal. 19 years of birthdays, of first days of school, of scraped knees and broken hearts and victories and failures. 19 years that can never be recovered. He looked at David and Emily, still holding hands like lifelines. But here's what I want you to understand. You get to write the next chapter. The past is written. Those 19 years are gone. But today, right now, you have a choice about tomorrow. The healing didn't happen in one moment. But it began in one moment. Dr. Phil arranged for family counseling, intensive, immediate. He connected them with a therapist who specialized in reunion trauma. He had his team compile resources for adoptive reunion, for processing complex grief, for rebuilding from broken trust. This isn't a TV ending. He told them as cameras finally shut off for real. This is a beginning. And it's going to be hard. Harder than today. There will be anger and blame and hurt that resurfaces. But you have something now that you didn't have yesterday. You have each other. And you have the truth. Margaret, the grandmother who had carried that letter for 19 years, finally spoke. I kept my promise, David. I told her when she needed to know. How did you know she needed to know? Dr. Phil asked. Because Emily dropped out of college. Margaret said simply. Not because she was lazy or lost, but because she was searching for something she couldn't name. An absence she couldn't identify. I saw the announcement for the show, and I knew it was time. Dr. Phil looked at the letter, still sitting on the table where David had placed it after reading. "Can I ask you something, Emily? What are you going to do with that letter?" Emily picked it up carefully, holding it like Margaret had, with both hands with reverence. "I'm going to keep it. And when I have kids someday, I'm going to show them. I'm going to tell them that their grandfather fought for me before he ever met me. And that truth, even when it takes 19 years, always finds its way home." Dr. Phil stood up, and for once, he didn't have a closing wisdom. He simply said, "Some things are bigger than television. This is one of them." 3 months later, the show aired a follow-up segment. Emily and David had spent every weekend together, building a relationship from scratch. Sarah was in therapy, working through her own trauma that had led to her choices. Margaret was teaching Emily to cook family recipes, filling in gaps of heritage and history. Emily had even returned to college, not to the original school, but to one closer to her father, studying psychology. "I want to help people find what they've lost," she told the camera. "Like I found my dad." The letter remained in a frame on Emily's desk. A reminder that love, even when separated by lies and time, never actually disappears. It waits. Patient. Persistent. Ready to be found. And in a studio in Los Angeles, Dr. Phil kept a copy of that letter in his office, not for show, but as a reminder of why he does what he does. Because sometimes breaking the script is the only way to write something real. The day the cameras stopped wasn't the day the show broke protocol. It was the day humanity mattered more than production schedules. And in that moment, everyone in that studio, crew, audience, family, learned something that can't be taught in any textbook. Truth doesn't follow a script. It writes its own story. And when it arrives, you don't roll cameras. You just witness. You just hold space. You just let love find its way home. The letter is still there, in Emily's room. A 19-year-old promise, finally kept. A father's love, finally delivered. A daughter's truth, finally known. And that's a story worth stopping the cameras for.